But as a business owner, if you're saying you don't have very much IT, you don't have a need for it, you probably have more of a need than you know. You probably don't even know what you don't know.
Travis, welcome to another episode of Let's Make IT Simple. So for today, we're gonna cover a topic that any IT service provider, managed IT services provider is very familiar with. Whenever there's new customers, potential clients, this is something that I know that you've mentioned, our sales managers mentioned, comes up quite often. And that's when someone says, we don't need that much IT.
Yep.
Which is kind of ironic, but I'll let you get into that. So what's your response? What's your general response when a potential client says to you, we don't need that much IT?
Yeah, great question. We get that a lot. It's funny because people will reach out to us and say, we want to talk to you about IT support. And then 95% of the customers we meet with for the first time, one of the first things they say is, we really don't need that much IT support. So we hear it constantly. What I think they mean when they're saying that is we're not currently doing a whole lot with our IT company. So we don't call them that often. We don't really do a whole lot. And that's what they're trying to say. And I get that because maybe who they're working with currently is more of a reactive type provider, or they don't have one. Maybe it's, a relative, or maybe somebody in the office that's dealing with their IT. So one of the things that I like to point out, or just like people to think about, is we're really not that different, generally speaking, right? As people, we're not that different, really. There's so much that we have in common versus what we don't have in common. Same thing is true with most businesses, right? Most businesses have a lot of the same things. I'll name a couple of these things just quickly here, right? Most businesses have email, they have phones, some sort of internal communication, maybe like Teams or Zoom or Slack. And so they might do video calls as well. They probably have files that they're generating. They need a place to put that, either on a file server or in the cloud, right? They probably have some main line of business application that runs their company. They probably have support from a cloud service. Usually those are cloud hosted, but maybe it's self-hosted. Maybe they have a domain controller. They probably have laptops, desktops, a wireless network, a wired network at the office, a firewall, right? Some sort of security, maybe antivirus, maybe a little bit more than that. Generally, this is most businesses. So if you're construction, your law firm, manufacturing, you name it, nonprofit, profit, retail, commercial, whatever it is, these things are pretty common. Again, there are some uniquenesses for each environment. Maybe you're fully remote. Maybe you're spread out across the country. But generally, they're all pretty much the same. And so the needs are going to be similar business to business. So that's the first thing I try to talk to them about is, well, what do you have currently?
Stealing an illustration from you when you compared it to us as humans, you say, most humans have hair, although I don't have a whole lot of it. We have eyes, we have ears, we have teeth.
We need to eat. We need
the
breathe,
same things, right? Yeah. We need to eat. We need to breathe. We need to sleep. We have some common needs. Now, obviously, there's uniqueness as well, but just kind of piggybacking on that illustration. But something that you said on the offset of that was a word that we use quite often, which is reactive.
Right.
And we usually use that with synonymously, or not synonymously, but in tandem with proactive. Usually we're talking about the two things in tandem, reactive versus proactive. Now, I know most people think of IT, I know myself included, as a business owner, as an employee of a company, I always thought of IT as something that kind of, someone comes in, they fix a problem. But now that I have a little more insight on that, can you kind of dive into that and why that's important in terms of answering that question of how much IT do I really need?
Yeah, great. It's a great comparison, the reactive to the proactive, putting those two together and saying, what are the differences here? Most companies have reactive IT. They have a problem, they pick up the phone, they call somebody, they fix the problem. Everybody needs that. Everybody needs a place to call and somebody to help them when they're in trouble. In most businesses, the way that their IT has sort of evolved over time, They were a small business. They were kind of scrappy. They probably didn't have a whole lot of money or a whole lot of customers. So they were doing fine with whatever the bare minimum was until they reached a problem. They had to find a solution for that problem. They found the solution, implemented it, and they just kept going until the next problem. What happens is over time, you have cobbled together these solutions. Here's where how I'm getting my email and taking care of that. Here's where we're buying computers and taking care of that. Here's the how we have set up our Wi-Fi network, etc. Here's our line of business app. But when you've reached a higher level of operational maturity, it's nice to kind of take a 10,000 foot view, take a look at what you've created here, and ask yourself, is this ideal? Do these solutions really meet our needs the best they can? Are they the most effective? Are they the most affordable? Are they do they work well with each other, or are we creating gaps? Do we have liabilities? Do we have exposures because of them? What is the strategy? What's the plan? Is it time to have a plan with regards to IT? So that's where a proactive IT provider comes in, right? Is to say, well, let's get to know your business better. What do you do? How do you do it? What are your objectives for the year? And how can we make sure that your information technology is aligned with those objectives, right? How do we make sure that this helps you get there where you're trying to go? Do you have a lifecycle management program in place? Do you know when your computers need to be replaced? Are we refreshing them regularly? Or we just wait until these things just blow up and then we're scrambling and buying whatever we can find down at Best Buy and hoping it's good enough and hoping we didn't get overcharged? Or are we budgeting for this? Are we planning for this? Are we making sure that not only are we replacing things on a regular cadence to avoid unnecessary outages and downtime, but also to make sure that our employees actually have really the equipment they need to do their job effectively? Or are we letting them go work on these machines for years and years after these things really should have been removed, and it's slow and they're not as effective or productive as they could be because we're working on legacy hardware that just doesn't cut it anymore because things have changed? Do we have a plan, right? So that's the difference. And if you're coming from a reactive IT environment, your thought again, we don't do that much with IT. You don't need that much IT because you haven't been doing that much with your IT. It sounds like your IT person hasn't been doing much at all. They just wait until something goes wrong. You call them and then they benefit from your misery. We don't want to be in that position, right? That's not how we want to operate. And it's really not what you want as a business owner either. And you know this, especially when you've seen the contrast, the difference between the two.
Yeah. And I guess it would make sense, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a really small business, it's you and one or two other people, your costs are low, your overhead is very low, and you have to keep it that way to keep you all employed and making money. Then maybe you have to work, on a reactionary basis. But as your business starts to grow and develop, then you start to, kind of have to, with business development, you have to think about, okay, where do I want my business to go? And that's when you start to apply these proactive solutions for your IT.
Definitely.
Does that sound about right?
Well, yeah. So if you don't have a lot of customers and you're not making a lot of money, you're just doing what you got to do. Mm-hmm. If you've gotten to the point where your business actually does make profit, does well, and it has grown, and you have a lot at risk, managing that risk and protecting that risk is very important. I mean, it's your livelihood, right? It's what feeds you. It's what feeds your employees. It's how you live. And so at that point, obviously you still have to be budget conscious. You can't just be careless with your money. You have to be responsible. You have to make sure that your money's spent effectively, that you're actually getting something back from it that's worth the investment. Absolutely. But what a lot of people don't realize is they've built something very precious and valuable to them. They've done nothing to protect it. They've done nothing to prevent themselves from actually being a problem for their own customers. They're not in a position to withstand a catastrophe, an actual encryption event or things like that, the way that they think they are. A lot of times they think, oh, we've got backups, but they can't articulate what those backups are. They don't know where they're at. They have never been tested. They don't know if they're set up in a fashion that will prevent them from also getting encrypted in an encryption event. So there's just a whole lot of risk here, and you're just not in the, if you're not accustomed to looking at this differently, I get it. That's okay. But with Simpleworks, when people call us in, we try to educate instead of sell, right? We try to say, here's how maybe you've been doing things. We learn about that. Here's another way you could do things, and it's a better way of doing things. It's a more mature way of doing things, and you really get value from it. And so that's how we have that conversation with the customer.
Yeah, and I know I've heard you say before, which is something that I think is really valuable, that even if somebody doesn't go with Simpleworks, when you leave that meeting, hopefully they will have at least learned something
Right.
that they can apply to their business going forward.
Absolutely.
So that's a great way of looking at it as well. Now, I want to put you on the spot here and ask you about
Sure.
ask you to give us an illustration. And the reason why I ask this is because a lot of times business owners can recognize the importance of their own service or product, but any service or product that they need to use as a function to enable their business to function, maybe sometimes it's harder for them to apply such a high value to that. What's an illustration that you could give business owners to help them to relate to how important it is to consider all of these functions of IT?
Sure. So if you think about, I'll go back to the reactive proactive comparison again. If you're driving in your car and you get into a car accident, you definitely want to be able to call 911 and have somebody extricate you from that vehicle, right? And save your life, take you to the hospital, keep you alive. That's important. Having somebody that you can call and have them save you is great. The problem is a lot of IT companies aren't given the opportunity to prevent the accident in the first place. That's what we like to do, right? We like to be involved with you early on. We want to make sure your brakes work. We want to make sure you have airbags, that you have a seatbelt, power steering is good. You got the fluids, you know how to drive. We can do all this stuff to be preventative. Make sure you got a car with crumple zones that's got a good safety rating in the first place. Let's not get into the accident. Let's not do that. Let's put some effort and some time into your environment, make it a much safer place. Make it give you some nice amenities at the same time that make your experience better, right? We want you to work better. We want you to work faster. Do you have heated seats? Do you got power windows? Do you have what you need to really just make the whole process of going to work, getting the job done, efficient, effective, quick and easy and enjoyable? Or do you have these obstacles, stuff you're dealing with, where instead of dealing with work, you're thinking about you're trying to get through your technology and past your technology to get your job done because it's in the way and it's a hassle. Let's remove that, right? Let's make it so that it's transparent. And then if there is an accident, because it can still happen, well, I mean, what are we dealing with here? The likelihood that you're in a bad shape, far reduced, right? Much higher chance you're going to be okay. We're going to get you out of there. We're going to be able to get you back up and running in no time because we took the time, we spent the time and the effort to make things right in the first place. And that's how we like to operate, and that is how we operate, right? We only take on customers who are willing to embrace this philosophy of let's do things the right way. Let's get ahead of it. Let's get some organization and let's get a plan. Those are the only people we want to work with. And we also require that our customers communicate with us regularly. C-level CEOs, owners, they have to be involved with us. They're not involved. They're not going to be happy with the product. We're not going to be happy because we're not going to be able to do what we need to do in the environment. And everybody's going to hate the relationship. So we make sure we actually establish relationships. We get proactive. We talk. We meet regularly. And these aren't boring technology meetings. These are business strategy meetings. And we're just the technical voice in the room. So that's my illustration. And hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that's something that you had mentioned before in our conversations, which I always appreciate because as a marketer, it's nice to know about the business, really the inner workings of the business, why it's good, why I want to sell, why I want to help sell. And those meetings are incredible. I mean, you've allowed not only myself, but some of the staff to see portions of that meeting just to see the value of it. Um, it's incredible. I mean, and you see also how the business owners, they perk up, they see, how important it is to apply X, Y, and Z in terms of IT to their long-term solutions and midterm, short-term solutions for business success. Stephen, our VCIO, really helps navigate them through that, and you as well. And that's an awesome piece that I feel like if a lot of our potential customers could see that piece, it would be like, whoa, okay, I get it now. So I just wanted to throw a little shout out to that.
Yeah, it's really important, we thought, for the staff to see exactly how these steering meetings operate and the conversations we're having with business owners. One of the things I love about my job is I get to meet a lot of business owners. I get to see how all these different verticals, like we mentioned earlier, manufacturing, construction, legal, nonprofits, healthcare, we get to see how they operate. And it's one, as a business owner myself, I learned so much from them. But two, I'm able to help them uh, learn things from what I've learned from other business owners. I'm able to share that with them, and I think that's what's really important with a good IT company. Is a great IT company will not just be there when you pick up the phone, but is really going to be there in advance, helping you from what they've learned from helping others. And if you're not getting that, you can get it. You don't have to go with Simpleworks, but find an IT provider that does that, because they're out there.
Yeah, no, that's great info. And so I want to swing back to your to the illustration about the car. Now we talked about you get in a car accident. If you've taken these preventative measures, then it definitely drastically increases the chance of the really important things, not losing your life.
Survival.
Not seriously survival as a person, and then in the illustration as a business as well. Your health, but there's another big piece of this as well, and I'd like you to speak on this a little bit. Liability.
Yeah, no, liability is huge, right? So if you don't maintain your vehicle and you're negligent, you're grossly negligent, and you're driving down the road and you cause an accident and people lose their lives, that's manslaughter. You can be held accountable for that, right? Because you didn't do what you ought to have done. You weren't taking into consideration the lives of others. Well, your business has liability as well. Can you tell your customers, if your customers asked you, they said, tell me about your cybersecurity, tell me about it. Do you have a plan? Do you do any audits? Who's in charge of it? How does it work? Can you honestly say to them, yeah, we're actually putting forward genuine effort, reasonable effort to secure not only our own data and information, but to protect you as well, because you're holding information on those customers. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't hold anything. I don't have medical records. I don't have credit card numbers. I don't have those things. So really, what's the liability here? What's my exposure? The problem is that your email, your services can be jumping. They can be a platform for an attacker to jump off from. So they can get in the middle of your communications with your customers. They can get in the middle of your communications with your vendors. This allows them to intercept wire transfers, to change payment information, to tell the customer, no, pay. We've got a new credit card portal, put it in over here and start paying over here. They're able to then send out viruses, and other tools from your platform. So you become the thing that's attacking your customers. You don't want to be in that position. A lot of people just think about, well, I don't really have data that is that critical or that sensitive. My customers don't either, so we're good. But you're not good, because, like I said, you can be the problem. So what we want to make sure we have is best practices employed in your environment. Do you have commercial grade equipment? Are you running a home router, a home firewall? Are you doing that? Are you buying consumer grade equipment from Best Buy? Do you not have a domain controller or Azure AD or some sort of centralized identity? Do you have a password policy even? Do you even have passwords? Anybody managing that? Is all your stuff, your employee stuff, tied into personal accounts and personal stuff? Or do you actually have it managed as a corporate environment? A lot of people don't even have that. They don't even know if they have it. So can we at least get the basics covered here so that you could honestly, if something really went wrong, not only could you stand in front of your customers and be and answer them honestly and say, yeah, no, I took preventative measures. Could you stand in front of a judge, in front of a court, and actually prove that no, you were not irresponsible, you were not negligent, you put in genuine effort to making sure that things were at least reasonably secured. You had a plan, you thought about it. That's just as important, right, as being able to get out of that car. That's just as important as the prevention of the accident, is making sure you're preventing the harm that you can do to other people. So there's a lot to this. It doesn't have to be particularly complicated, because we make it simple for our customers. We tell them what they need to do. We show them the gaps. We give them the solutions to fix it. But as a business owner, if you're saying you don't have very much IT, you don't have a need for it, you probably have more of a need than you know. You probably don't even know what you don't know, right? Because it's not what you deal with. So I would say, if that's what you think, no problem. Everybody feels that way at first. Have a conversation with somebody who's good at this, and they'll help you understand better what you're dealing with.
Well, as always, Travis, great advice, very practical, super helpful. And we're going to do what we always do. We're going to summarize it straight down to the meat and potatoes of it. 30 seconds or less, Travis. What do you say to your potential customers or anyone who might say to you, we don't need that much IT?
Right. So the first thing is, let's find out what you have. Let's find out what you're doing currently. You probably need more than you think, but maybe not a lot more. But let's find out what you're doing. Let's find out how you're doing it. Let's show you how you could be doing things. Let's reduce some liability for you, and let's put together a plan. So my thought is, be open to the idea that maybe there's more that can be done better, and you will benefit from it greatly.